go to some fan submitted questions presented by Xfinity. First question: what was the biggest surprise of the Big Ten this season? I mean, there's
That's a
two things where your
no-brainer.
head goes, but
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
go for it.
that's Indiana. That's the Indiana Hoosiers. I mean, that was the biggest surprise, not just in the Big Ten, but in college football. And
Yeah,
how quickly Kurt Signetti was able to turn things around from a mindset standpoint, first of all, and just to an expectation of being good and winning. And a lot of that was the coaches and the staff and the players that he brought with him from James Madison, who had great success there and expected to do the same thing in Bloomington, and they did.
I think it's hard to argue that it would be anything other than Indiana. The recency bias would tell you that Michigan beating Ohio State would be one of the biggest surprises within the Big Ten, but it's also a
That
rivalry
was a
game.
big surprise. You're right.
It's
Yeah.
a surprise, but it's the rivalry games, and especially a game that has that much emotion. You just always
Right.
know something weird can happen. So Indiana makes the most sense there. The second question is thoughts on year one of the quote Big 18.
Yeah. So, actually, I think it was, I was fun.
It
I
was.
mean, now the reality was when it was all said and done, there was a lot more excitement before the season started with the new teams and, the West Coast and trips there and trips east and all that. And at the end of the day, you had two teams that finished 6-6 and one that was 5-7, but the other one, Oregon, is number one and undefeated, the only undefeated team in college football. And I think because of that, and a little of the shine of Ohio State went off this past week when they lost to Michigan.
Yep.
But I think you could make an argument for that the Big Ten or the Big 18 now was the best conference in college football. I mean, if you take the top teams of Oregon, Penn State, Indiana, and Ohio State, I think that four is better than the top four of the SEC or the top four of any conference. Now that doesn't mean they're better than Texas or Georgia, those two teams that are playing the championship game. But after that in the SEC, it was just kind of just okay to me. And then the other conferences, is there more than one team? There are two teams at the most that would maybe fit in that. I don't think so. I think those top four in the Big Ten clearly are the best four.
I think the one thing that you said, and this is really just a case for the entire conference realignment for this year, with the new teams in the Big 12 and the Big 10, in the SEC and the ACC, and almost the entire Pac 12 disintegrating minus two
Right.
teams that have stuck it out. The one thing that it created this year was the parity that we've expected. And
Yeah.
only one undefeated team. This is the first time since 2007 that you got to the final week of the regular season and you only had one undefeated team remaining, which is pretty remarkable.
Yep.
And on top of that, you've got a number of teams that are 9-3 that are still going to be vying for a championship this year. And that's pretty cool. That's just not something that we're accustomed to seeing. So I think that parity that we expected this year came to fruition. The new conferences have helped that because they're deeper and they've got more talent dispersed around the country now. And the Big 18, and to your point, they've got four of the best teams in the entire country rolling into potentially the college football playoff. So it'll be fun to see how they fare against the rest of the conferences.
Yeah, and it's really the other thing that's cool, and we talked about how, in the very beginning of this season, there'll be no season like this, quite like this, ever again, because it was the first year of the 12-team playoff, first team of all the conference realignment. So everything was different this year. And it's evident even as we look at these championship games in a couple of conferences. We got SMU playing for an ACC championship, right? I mean, the first year in the conference. We have Arizona State, who was one of those Pac-12 teams, who's sitting there at 10-2 and playing really good football, playing for a Big 12 championship. We got Iowa State, who's never played for a championship, never been to the championship game, with a chance to play for it and win the championship and get in the college football playoff. So I think it's fascinating. Even a team like Clemson, who pretty much was written off, they lost badly to Georgia in week one and everybody wrote them off. Then they got a little bit of a run. Then they lost a couple games. But here they are in Charlotte this weekend playing for an ACC championship game. And if they beat SMU, they're going to be in the college football playoff. So crazy, crazy year that we've got more crazy zaniness ahead of us this weekend and beyond.
Yeah, Dabo Sweeney, Fran Brown says, "You're welcome."
Yeah, I
Over
know.
there in Clemson.
That was funny.
That was good. You can submit your questions to the show every week using hashtag Big Talk.